Alright everybody, this is a quick video talking about how to install the motor for our Flight Test Explorer plane onto the Flight Test mount. Making this video because the motor we use in class is different than the motor that they use in the flight test videos. So sometimes there's some confusion about how do I install the motor, or it gets installed the wrong way or something. So this is to help you install your SunnySky 2216 1250 kV motor into the Flight Test motor mount, which will go on the FT Explorer. Let's see here, right here in the back. Okay, that's our motor mount. All right, so you should have assembled your motor mount per the flight test instructions and basically glue these pieces together. Okay, and then once we get a hold of our motor, we'll pull this out of the case here and take a look at the pieces. Okay, so you have your motor here in a little bag. Then we have a little bag full of other assorted pieces. So let's clear the other stuff out for a second. We'll just look at that. I'm going to focus on those bits. Okay, so this is our motor itself. Okay, I'm just going to open the bag real quick so we can get it out of there. There we go. And this motor, yeah, works pretty well for these planes. And it's a little bit of an upgrade from the typical flight test motor that they will send with the planes as a power pack if you buy the power pack. These work pretty well. I like them a lot, and SunnySky is a very good brand of motor. They do really well, even when they're sometimes misused. Okay, they handle misuse decently as well, which is nice to have. Okay, the other pieces here, which I already opened this bag up earlier, you have kind of this little attachment here. You might recognize that from the Outlaw plane. We have this X piece here, and we have some assorted screws and other pieces. So let's open this up a little bit and get these pieces out careful. There's some really small pieces in here, so don't just dump it out willy-nilly. This one flew all the way over here. Okay, so there's some pieces in here we'll need, some pieces we won't. All right, so kind of like our Outlaw 250 plane, this motor is going to have a little mount that goes on the top of the motor in order for it to have a motor shaft, basically, and put the prop on. We're going to use the type of prop that'll go on this type of motor shaft, so we need to install this. So similar to the Outlaw, you'll see there has three, or the Outlaw's motor, I guess you should say. There are three holes here, 1, 2, 3, and in this mix of screws you have some larger screws, okay, some larger ones here. Let's try to separate those a little bit, there we go, and some smaller ones. Okay. We won't actually use these larger ones for anything, so you don't have to throw them away, but we won't use them for this, so we'll kind of put those off screen. Again, those are the larger of the two. Okay, so grab all the larger ones and separate those out. These little clips here are clips for the back of the motor, replacement clips, which is really nice of SunnySky to include those. Those are hard to find, and if you have to take your motor apart for some reason, you probably end up damaging the clip that's on there. So it's nice to have some replacement clips. That's pretty cool. So if I were you, I'd just take the clips and these bigger screws and put them back in the little bag. We'll just put them off to the side for now. We have these smaller screws. Okay, so they give you some extras, but these smaller screws, let me grab my screwdriver here. Just like on the motor for the Outlaw, or at least very similar to the motor for the Outlaw plane, if you have built that one, you'll take these little screws, okay, oops, put on there. You'll apply some Loctite to each screw and use them to screw the motor shaft here onto the motor itself. So they'll just thread down in here like so, and you'll put 1, 2, 3 into the motor. Okay, again, I'm putting Loctite on each screw, and that motor shaft will then be installed. I'm not going to do all three of those right now, but you get the idea. 1, 2, 3 of those. Looks like they give you three spares, I guess. They give you 6 screws in here. That's kind of interesting. Oh, sorry, my hat's in the way. Give you 6 screws, so that's a lot of extras, I guess. Cool. All right, so we have those little screws. So once your motor's assembled per that setup, you're basically ready to mount it onto the wooden firewall or power pod piece, whatever you want to call it. Okay, I'm going to put these small screws aside. Okay, and the only piece we're going to need for the rest of this operation are basically these pieces here. So we're not actually going to use this X piece at all. At least the way we do it in class, we don't use that piece. I find it difficult for some students and just in general to get the wood screws to bite into this wood, so we just ignore this piece altogether. Okay, and we mount the motor directly onto the firewall, which works just fine, and it saves a little bit of weight, a little bit extra headache. I think it's a good option. So these two pieces here, this little ring is meant to go on the shaft, and this will go on the motor shaft. Okay, and that would, both of those would sandwich, your prop would be here in the middle, and that would tighten down on top of your prop like it's tightening on my finger right now. Okay. As a note, I do have nylock nuts for you guys to use on these motors, just like we use on the Outlaw motors. They give you a standard nut here, but I prefer nylock, so I'll give you one of those to use instead of the normal nut they give you with the motor. So you can use either, but I have nylocks for you. You don't want to lose this piece. It's really helpful for holding that prop on with a larger contact area than just the nut. So don't lose this piece, okay? Keep them in one spot, keep them in the little bag with all the other screws and that kind of thing. All right. But we have our motor shaft installed, which you could do after this step, but we already have it installed, and that's good. So we have 1, 2, 3 screws in there. I didn't put all 3 in, but you would want to put all 3 screws in with Loctite. Okay. And then the motor we're going to match up to these kind of slotted holes here. All right. So typically you want the motor wires to go kind of down. We can see this on this plane a little bit. Let's see if I can get this under the dot cam here. Maybe we'll zoom this back a little bit here. Okay. So this is a different motor, but you see the motor wires go down and then they kind of go into the plane. Okay, so that's probably best. I mean, you could have them go over the top too, but kind of just makes it have to go farther. So either way, I'm going to put mine facing down. And so on this motor, the holes are not symmetrical. So there's a set of holes. These 2 holes here are a different diameter than these 2 holes here. Okay, and that's okay. That's how most motors are made, at least larger motors. That's why we have the slots here, so we can adapt the screw to go whatever hole it needs to. So it's maybe a little bit hard to see in the dot cam, but we're going to try to get the motor wires facing down as best we can and line up these holes, okay, with the slots. So about like that. You can kind of see the holes there through the slots. All right, a little bit hard to see, like I said, but you want to get them all lined up there. That's the best option. And you have it centered, of course, so this middle part of the motor, which will actually spin around as the motor spins, see that moving there as I spin it by hand. You don't want that to be over on the side and rubbing on something like the wood. That'll cause problems. So it should be centered up and have all the holes lined up, 1, 2, 3, 4 holes, and that will be how we'll install it. Okay. Now, for the installation of the motor, I actually have some screws specifically for you guys to use. They don't come in the kits. I just bought some specifically for this purpose. They work well, and they're the right length, which is really important. Okay, so when we have a screw going into the bottom of a motor, okay, we don't want the screw to be too long. If it's too long and it goes up through the bottom of the motor and hits the copper coils in there, it can damage the motor and permanently damage the motor. Okay, so I measured these out. So these are 6mm screws, M3x6s, so 3mm diameter, 6mm length from below the head to the end of the screw, and those should be the right measurement to go through the wood, okay, and into the motor, but not go too far into the motor where we're getting close to those coils at all. Okay, so make sure you get 4 of these M3x6 screws. For me, I didn't pass them out with the kits. I kind of forgot about these the other day. Make sure you get 4 of these to install your motor. There's different colors and head types, but it doesn't really matter as long as the length of the threads is the same. Okay. So what I'll do now is let me switch my screwdriver bit out here. There we go. I just had this bit a second ago. Oh, come on. Of course I lose it when I'm trying to make the video. Oh, let's see. It just disappeared on me. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay. Back in business. Sorry about that. Zoom out a little bit here. Okay, so I have my screwdriver with the right bit. Put the screws over here a little bit. And so we're just going to take the screw, go through the motor mount here, get it aligned. So this screw is going to go in the kind of the upper right hole up here. So the motor wires go down if that's what you want to do. I'm just going to kind of get that threaded in there lightly. I'm not going to cinch it down yet, just kind of get it to start biting. I'm going to make sure things are aligned, you know, because it can slide a little bit because of the slots. Okay. I'll get another screw. I get 3 more screws. Whoops, there's 4 more. 3 more screws, and we'll get the screws all set up here. Get them in place. Now, personally, I like to get the screws in place, kind of get them lightly in place first, because there is some sliding around. Like I said, that can happen, and we don't want to tighten them down before we have things aligned. That'll just damage pieces and components probably. Okay. Well, there's our motor. The screws are kind of loose still, so I can move it around a little bit. But it looks like it's fairly well centered. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten down the screws one by one. Just a kind of a brief hand tightening, and that's because what I like to do is to keep this motor in alignment, I'll have the screws kind of tightened by hand, right? And then I'll pull them out one by one, okay? And again, apply some Loctite to the screw, okay? Put that one back in, okay? Pull out the next one, and the next one, Loctite each screw. Once they're all back in and kind of loosely tightened, or I guess medium tight, then I go back through and I'll give them a final kind of tightening to get them really nice and snug in there, okay? You don't need to use a wrench or anything, but get them nice and snug, okay? And that way the motor won't go anywhere, and it's Loctited, so the screws shouldn't be able to come out. Okay, don't go nuts on this and like crush the wood. I mean, if you're pretty strong, you can really crush the screw into the wood there. We don't need to do that. Okay, just get it nice and snug on there so it's not going to go anywhere, and so the screws are all in place and secure. All right, so that's how you mount the motor. Again, we don't use this at all, so don't use that for anything. Okay. We have the small screws we used came with the motor to attach the motor shaft here, 1, 2, 3, and then we use the specific screws I have, M3x6s, for you to attach the motor to the wooden mount here. And that's pretty much all there is to it. The rest of the wiring, all that fun stuff, you'll see in the flight test video, or if you have any questions, let me know. You can run these leads up through here and back to the ESC. You can do it whichever way you want, but make sure you mount the motor correctly so it doesn't come off when you're flying. That would be an instant glider, and you might have some interesting flight if that happens. All right, thanks.